What's up, gamers? We're still working on the next big video for the channel. However, I decided I would put together a compilation for you guys of the Gen 1 through 4 every shiny, legendary, and mythical Pokemon, as well as remove the ads from those videos. Just to have them all in one big video for you guys, just in case you wanted to watch all of them straight through, or just have that one video as reference for doing all of that yourself if you were in the mood to do that. In the meantime, before the next big video, I'm also posting content on my original channel, The Mr. Trails, as well as the Trails Extra channel. We're posting VODs over there and bonus content, stuff like that. Bonus content. This one does not want to stay up. It has a mind of its own. But without further ado, here is the full movie, the full compilation of the Glitched Shiny Legendary series.
Nintendo is pulling the plug on 3DS online services, the only exception being made for Pokemon transferring through Poketransporter and Pokemon Bank. However, the Pokemon Company still warned us Nintendo is pulling the plug on 3DS online services, the only exception being made for Pokemon transferring through Poketransporter and Pokemon Bank. However, the Pokemon Company still warned us to transfer our Pokemon now in case it shuts down later. But if Pokemon Bank and Transporter do shut down, they'll be taking away some of the easiest or only ways to get certain shiny Pokemon. So I wanted to get them before it's too late. And we're going to get them in the fastest ways possible. For this video, we're traveling all the way back to the Generation 1 Pokemon games, which if you've played or watched extensively, you'd know that shiny Pokemon don't exist in Gen 1, but they also kinda do. Schrodinger's shinies, if you will. While you will never see a Pokemon be shiny in a Generation 1 game, if you transport a Pokemon to a future game, it has the chance to be shiny. It can be shiny whether you transferred it to the Generation 2 cartridges or use the Poketransporter for the 3DS Virtual Console. Lying within this possibility, we have one of the only ways to get a particular shiny Pokemon. Mew. While Event Mew is one of the most common event Pokemon ever, shiny Mew events have been very uncommon. They kept it rather exclusive the past 25 years so that one day they could paywall it in Pokemon Go. And while we can cheat a shiny Mew into our older games, Game Freak doesn't like hacked Pokemon and have historically taken measures to give hackers a hard time. If you used Action Replay heavily in Gens 3 and 4, you were quite prone to getting bad eggs, corrupted Pokemon data that could destroy your save files. And I remember in Gen 4 not being able to use my hacked shiny legendaries against my friends in battles. And they still don't like hacked Pokemon today. Pokemon Home has hack checks, and while it's unlikely, you might get caught for it and banned from the service and Nintendo Online Play as a whole. So provided we don't have a time machine to get one from the past events, if we want a shiny Mew, there exist only two options. Number one is tricking our Emerald version into letting us encounter Mew, then either shiny hunt it or RNG manipulate it, but another method exists in Generation 1, which will be a much faster transfer process, and this can be done with the power of the 8F glitch. Like many older games, the Generation 1 Pokemon games are quite broken and barely functional. And that's all it took to entertain an entire generation of children. And all the way back in 2002, players had found a way to abuse these broken games to get a Mew on their save file. Meanwhile, I was in preschool and didn't even know what a Pokemon was yet. And you can get Mew quite early into the game before even battling the second gym. Step 1, get to Cerulean City. Step 2, catch an Abra. Step 3, walk in front of this guy and frame perfectly press start and teleport away. Step 4, battle one of these trainers. Step 5, go back to the start of the route that this guy was on, and bam, you've encountered a Mew. Bonus points if you use Growl on the trainer's last Pokemon 6 times to make the Mew level 1. Extra bonus points if you then gain a small amount of experience to initiate a level underflow glitch to make it level 100. But this Mew has a fundamental problem. It's not legit enough. It'll be considered a cheated Pokemon in hack checks, because by normal game standards, Mew should be an unobtainable Pokemon. But there is a particular Generation 1 Mew that will be able to bypass these hack checks. Its OT has to be GF with the ID number 22796. It's so close to being nice. But this is where the 8F glitch comes in. Through the power of item storage underflow and literal demon magic, we can obtain the item 8F. Not to be confused with 4F, 9F, or 10F, which you might find if you mess the glitch up. The item 8F allows us to run arbitrary code execution, which, as long as you find a setup for it, you can do basically anything you want to in the game. And we can use this to edit Mew, both to make it a quote legitimate GF Mew and to make it shiny. If you want to try out this process of getting the shiny Mew for yourself, I'd recommend Austin John Play's video guide on the subject, with one note about it. Don't wait as long as he did to attempt cloning your Mew, because you might corrupt your save file 7 hours into the process and have to start over. And then you might try to clone it when you get to Mew 2 hours in and corrupt your save file again and have to start over again. So maybe just don't clone the Mews. You can get as many Mews as you want by encountering a Ditto and having it transform into one of your Pokemon that has a special stat of 21. I followed this whole process a few months ago, getting myself 7 shiny Mews, one of which happened to become 6 IV on the transfer. Pretty neat. And then I did the Mewtwo event raid with them in Scarlet and Violet to give them the Mighty Mark. But seeing as this is a pretty convoluted setup that probably will take about 8 hours, all for this one shiny Pokemon, while you're at it, why not just go ahead and get the other legendary Pokemon from Gen 1 and make them shiny too? Step 1, catch the legendaries, which when I first started doing this video, I had 4 badges. Step 0.5, beat the game. Step 1, catch all the legendaries. Step 2, get all the items you need for the glitch again, or just do all the other legendaries at the same time as Mew. Step 3, use 8F on each of the legendaries with 178x accuracy. And step 4, use 8F on each of them with 177x accuracy. And bada bing bada boom, you've got all of the Kanto legendary Pokemon shiny. And these guys don't need any special tinkering to make them legitimate, you can just beam them up. That's probably too old of a reference these days, huh? I'd say this method is the fastest way to get every Gen 1 shiny legendary. Maybe RNG manipulation could be faster if you already have an established save file on Fire Red and Leaf Green and Emerald. Perhaps Blissey or Hefe could try to speedrun it and finish in under 10 hours. Gen 3 or perhaps Gen 4 RNG manip might be good enough for that. But while you have the choice of getting shiny Mew in either Gen 1 or Gen 3 with Emerald, shiny Celebi is a different story. To this day, the only method of being able to obtain an English shiny Celebi is with the Pokemon Crystal Virtual Console game. But if you're trying to get it quickly, there's one problem with that. Nobody's really figured out how to RNG manipulate it. I stumbled across an old Reddit thread that says Gen 2 RNG manipulation is definitely possible, but shiny Celebi is pretty much the only reason to do it. There is RNG manipulation in the speedrun of the game, but they would prefer to not run into shiny Pokemon because the animation costs time. So they probably didn't research on how to get shinies that much. And most people looking for shiny Celebi are satisfied just being able to hunt it regularly or use a bot program to do the work for them. On top of people not caring to find out an RNG setup to make it shiny, once it is shiny and you transfer it, it's going to have 5 perfect IVs. And IVs are one of the other main reasons to RNG manipulate. So what was I going to do? Was I going to spend some of the valuable time that we can still transfer old Pokemon doing this shiny hunt legitimately, perhaps even for months? Or assemble an Avengers of sorts to get a replicable RNG manipulation setup for Celebi? Or was there going to be some sort of easier way? You see, while the Gen 2 games are slightly less broken than Gen 1, there's still a major exploit that breaks them wide open. Introducing the coin case glitch in Pokemon Gold and Silver. There was a translation bug with the coin case where using it jumps to the RAM segment pertaining to storing Pokemon cry data. And depending on what Pokemon's cry you listen to, you can do a bunch of interesting glitches with it. But this is our pathway to arbitrary code execution like we had with the 8F glitch, but arguably it's even easier to pull off. You basically just need to get to Goldenrod City and I haven't played the game yet. So now this video is a Pokemon Gold Let's Play. Picked Totodile, named him Bart. Decided to continue to name all of the Pokemon I caught a 4-letter name. Got to Goldenrod City, and I kinda just kept playing the game. I knew I was going to do the coin case glitch, I just haven't played a ton of Johto games, and I had no clue where the coin case even was. So I just kept getting all the badges, finding a weird fish, stopping Team Rocket, and oh hey, the coin case. It's in the Goldenrod City underground, by the way. I could do the glitch now, but I I made the critical mistake of starting the save file on Sunday, because at the beginning of the game I just clicked through those options to start playing faster. But the TMs for Return and Frustration can only be obtained on a Sunday, and you need Return for the glitch. Ironically, I would wait until Sunday in real life to fix the clock, and by then Bart had enough friendship for Return. Oh, and would you look at that, I beat the champion a couple days ago. I haven't even caught a legendary at this point, or even released the legendary trio, but you don't actually have to. We're going to catch them all with the power of checking my bag and knowing there's 0 coins in it. Just like when you're at the gas station and you just barely didn't have enough time on the tire filling machine for that one last tire, and you just keep rummaging through the glove compartment hoping to find a quarter, but you know you're going to have to break one of your crisp dollar bills because you have no coins. I'm not projecting, you are. To perform Pokemon modification with the coin case glitch, you are thankfully going to need far less specific Pokemon and items than for the Mew glitch. For slot 1, you'll have the Pokemon you want to change, the edit Pokemon. In slot 2, you can have any Pokemon you want. I would recommend, say, a level 2 Pidgey and teach it Fly, because you're going to need Fly a lot if you do this for multiple Pokemon. And in slot 3, we need a special Pokemon. It's called a Slide Pokemon, and it's important this Pokemon is low level with low friendship, and it's going to need specific DVs, which are similar to IVs in future generations. You might have to catch a few Pokemon in the early routes to find a good slide Pokemon, but with my first attempt, our boy Cedo here did just fine. And in slot 4 of your party, you're going to need a Quagsire holding TM02, with Return as its first move. We'll use the Return I got from the department store, and you can find the TM02 for Headbutt in the Ilex Forest by talking to this guy. Just make sure not to use it and give it to Quagsire instead. And the only other thing you need to do is set up your boxes, because the names of the boxes become the code that we are executing. Way easier than getting 218 Carbos. And with specific box names, we'll be able to modify the first Pokemon in our party to make it shiny or even a different species. I'd recommend editing higher level Pokemon for the legendaries for reasons you'll see shortly. So I caught a bunch of extra Pokemon in Victory Road. With everything set up, we can now do the glitch. We can fly to Cherry Grove City, entering the Pokemart and saving the game. We leave the Pokemart and walk 4 steps to the right. We go to the Pokedex and listen to Bellsprout's cry. And we use the coin case, making sure to switch pockets in the bag before doing so. We back out of the bag to be spammed by text on the start menu, and we struggle to move the arrow down to the save option, as the game will only register inputs on a couple of frames. We save the game, and once it's done, we find ourselves and the people of Cherry Grove City invisible. Horrified, we reset our game, hoping to end this nightmare, and everything is back to normal. Or is it? If we've made it to this point without the game freezing or entering the glitch dimension, our Pokemon that we've edited is going to be a bit broken. The game will still say that it's the same Pokemon in the stats screen, but if we send it out into battle, we'll see that it's actually changed. But we need one more step to complete the transformation, to deposit it in the Pokemon daycare. Are we geniuses or what? Yeah, actually, you just turned my rock snake into a freaking legendary bird. This is very likely going to cost a lot of money. It's pretty common that they'll say they raised it 250 something levels, but the magic of turning something else into a legendary Pokemon I think is worth the price tag. I would repeat this process, battling the Elite Four again for extra money and changing the box 2 name to the species that I wanted, until I had all 6 legendaries of Gen 2. And now I would make them shiny. We just need to edit the boxes to the new code and do the coin case glitch again on each one of them. And boom! We now have every legendary Pokemon of Gen 2, but shiny. And for all of his hard work, I decided to make Bart shiny too, and include him in all the fun. But there's still the chance that these Pokemon would be flagged by the system for a couple of reasons. Number 1, while the species changed, the moveset stayed the same. And number 2, they're likely not going to be high enough level. The hack checks should be smart enough to know the minimum possible level that a Pokemon can be caught at, and they know certain Pokemon can't have certain moves. So to remedy this, I deleted all of the moves from the legendaries and taught them TMs or HMs. You can delete the unnecessary moves in Blackthorn City. And then there was the arduous task of getting each of them to the minimum possible level, running through the Elite Four with switch training at first, but making a bit faster progress by going to the Kanto gyms later on. This took around 8 hours just to get everyone from level 30 to around level 40. Celebi was actually the easiest one since it appears in Crystal at level 30 I didn't have to level it up at all. But everything else needs to be level 40. That's the level of the trio and the box legendary for your game. The opposite legendary does appear in these games at level 70, but thankfully you just have to get them to level 40 because they still appear in the other game at level 40. But after those 8 hours of grinding, they were all the appropriate levels, which means it was time to transfer. There wasn't a ton of documentation on this process to know if it would even work today. There was some info, but I didn't find an up-to-date YouTube video on it or anything like that. So I was kinda nervous that one or more of these Pokemon were going to be flagged by Pokemon Home as illegitimate. I wasn't even sure that something as simple as making Bart shiny would be an issue either, but I put the transfer code to get them in Pokemon Home, and holy crap, the servers were terrible as I was doing this. I kept getting error 504, which might indicate the servers were under maintenance at the time, but eventually I was able to get into Pokemon Home and see those shiny beauties sitting in the boxes. And thankfully, the Gen 1 Pokemon didn't trigger a hack check while they had been sitting in there for a week. And I was able to greet all of our new friends in 3D for the first time. Except for Bart. Don't worry, Bart, the DLC's coming soon. One thing that was really interesting is even though it was obtained in the same method as the others, Celebi is marked as being met in a fateful encounter, while the others weren't. This tag is usually for event Pokemon, and it just assumed it was from the event, seeing as the Crystal event is the only way you would be able to get it otherwise. Something I thought was kind of neat. In a perfect world, I'd be able to shiny hunt all of these legendaries in these games the normal way. But if Pokemon Bank shuts down, getting these shinies with the Game Boy Origin will be lost to time, unless Game Freak decides to allow us to play Gen 1 to Gen 3 on the Switch. Like, come on guys, we know it's possible. And they're just kinda leaving money on the table. Us content creators, we'd spend like $150 right now to have all of the Gen 1 through 3 games on the Switch. Hopefully I do get to hunt them all in these games one day, but it's a race against the clock at this point. Being from glitches, I know a lot of you won't see these Pokemon as being legitimate, but that being said, glitch Pokemon still do have their charm to them. You're not hacking the Pokemon into the game, you're not doing anything that's outside of the game's code to produce, and you still have to invest a good amount of time getting them manually, just not quite as much as shiny hunting them legitimately. And you can't mess anything up, you also have to make sure that they're going to be able to transfer. And while glitched and hacked Pokemon are typically not transferable and are just for random fun, I personally find these glitch shiny legendaries to be a beautiful kind of loophole. But thank you guys for watching. This has been the easiest method to getting all of the Generation 1 and Generation 2 legendary shiny and transferable through Pokemon Home. What else should I get? Should we make it a series? Go Generation 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Let me know by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And shout out to the channel members for buying me some ramen each month. We do have the DLC incoming, for which I will probably go live here on YouTube for launch night to go through the story and such, followed by streaming on Twitch for our 100 shiny sandwiches in the Indigo Disc DLC video. So make sure to follow the Twitch, stop on by, and say D's nuts in the chat. Until then, I have been Trails, and I will catch you guys next time. In a world where the 3DS online services are shutting down, the people are fearful for the future of Pokemon transfers through Pokemon Bank. A shutdown of this service would render certain shiny Pokemon completely unobtainable outside of special events, and the fate of these Pokemon rests in one other Pokemon's hands. And his name is question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. That's right, we're back, baby. If Pokemon Bank is at risk of shutting down someday, then I'm gonna make sure to get some of the shinies that are only possible to get in the older games, outside of special events or Pokemon Go. Because unless you want to give me a time machine, I can't get those right now. But shiny Jirachi is in Pokemon Go. Not right now, it's not, so I don't want to see a single comment about it. Plus, this is what Pokemon Go would look like for me right now. Anyway, today we'll be exploring Pokemon Emerald to see how many shiny legendaries and mythicals we can end up getting here, using any means possible to catch each new legendary listing in the Pokedex. There are a few shiny legendaries that we can pretty much only get here, but in order to do that, we're gonna have to start a new game. Wait, why are we playing in Japanese? Well, there's one particular Pokemon that's only going to be fully legal if we do it in Japanese Emerald. And, it's Mew again. Let's further clarify, going back to the last video on this. In Gens 1 and 2, shininess is determined by the DVs of the Pokemon, and the Mew that was distributed for the Virtual Console release didn't have a possible DV spread that allowed it to be shiny when it was transferred into the newer games. So while the 8F Mew is legit enough for Pokemon Home, it's technically still not legit, and Game Freak could, if they wanted to, make such a Mew be flagged as illegal. However, there was an event only for Japanese Emerald that allowed you to encounter a Mew with your OT on your save file, and shiny locks in-game didn't really exist until Generation 5, and this event was coded into the game, and even with all of the other generations, this remains the only way to get a shiny huntable Mew. So, how do we get it? Well, this goes all the way back to the beginning, as a major staple here in Generation 3 is going to involve us setting up for RNG manipulation. And fair warning, it's a little bit complicated. Are you ready? Set. Go. From the moment the game initially boots up, it'll start advancing the PRNG state. PRNG stands for Pseudo-Random Number Generator, and is how many games simulate randomness. However, it's only the illusion of randomness. You give it an input value, the initial seed, which goes through a function, resulting in an output value, which then becomes the next input value. So if something crazy were to happen, like, I don't know, having the same initial seed every time, then your RNG would be the same every time you boot up the game. But that would be crazy, right? Oh hey, Pokemon Emerald has a bug that causes the initial seed value to always be 0. So we actually know what the RNG state will be at any given point in time. And since we know the RNG state, we'll know everything about a Pokemon that gets generated at any given point, including its PID number. And if this number matches with our Trainer ID and Secret ID numbers just right, it will cause a Pokemon to be shiny. Oh, and wouldn't you know it, these RNG states also determine those numbers at the start of the game. So depending on what frames we press A on, both to confirm our name and to clear the last text box from Professor Birch, will be assigned our Trainer ID as well as our hidden Secret ID. Through normal gameplay, we wouldn't be able to figure out our Secret ID number. However, if we know roughly how long it took us between those two A presses, maybe even down to a particular region of frames where it happened, then we can figure it out. And we do this by strategically soft resetting for a shiny starter. Using the program Pokefinder, we look for what would be a shiny frame with a particular SID, and if we're able to generate our starter on that frame and it turns up shiny, then we'll know our Secret ID. But if this frame doesn't give us a shiny, then we continue to try other nearby Secret ID numbers until it is shiny. If you want a full in-depth video guide on this process, check out this one from I'm a Blissey, link in the description. There are several videos from him and Papa Hefe that go over things like this in Generation 3, and I wouldn't have been able to make this video without their guidance. So make sure you go subscribe to them, and make sure you're subscribed to me as well. Guys, we're so close to that haha funny number. You might think you're subscribed and you're not actually subscribed, so just double check. And if you just hit that sub button, maybe we'll make it there before the make-believe date of February 29th. And you liking this video tells YouTube to show it to more people, meaning that we'll hit the haha funny number even faster. But once again, Blissey and Hefe's videos were invaluable to making this video, especially because before this, I never RNG manipulated anything in this game, or performed any glitches in Gen 3, and we're gonna be doing quite a few of those. Fun fact, the only Gen 3 shiny that I ever found was a Zubat in a ROM hack that I made where everything was a Zubat, and I was just making the game as annoying as possible to play. Maybe I'll remaster that video at some point, because it was hot garbage. That one shiny Zubat is with over 500 hours logged in my childhood save files, and probably just as much on ROM hacks. And the only RNG manipulation I had done before was for the shiny Giratina in BDSP, and there's one major thing that I just wasn't quite ready for with Gen 3. Getting the shiny is genuinely difficult. The GBA games run at 60 frames per second, which, while being the absolute minimum desired target for most modern games to hit, it makes inputs that have to be frame perfect remarkably difficult, because it makes a frame less than 2/100ths of a second, or about this long. So between this and having multiple Secret ID numbers to check our shiny frame for, it might not surprise you that it took me around 7 hours to find a shiny starter. Whoever that was, thank you for the follow. Offline right now. Yes! It's it! Let's go! Yo, lucky follow. Though part of the reason it took me so long was my original Trainer ID led to some insanely long wait times for the first shiny frame on certain Secret IDs, We're talking like 60,000 plus advances for the first one, which would be nearly 17 minutes, and such a long wait time I felt wasn't even worth checking because you're more than likely not going to hit your frame on the first try, so that's a 17-minute wait multiple times, so rather than endure that, I checked all the reasonable wait time secret IDs, and they all failed. So I just restarted the process with a new trainer ID, finally getting my shiny Trico. Meet Klutz. Why Klutz? I don't know. It's 5 characters long and sounded good, because you only have 5 characters to work with in Japanese. Our first shiny frame here is at 15,488 advances, or having to wait 4.3 minutes. While it's still not perfect, it's at least doable. And the stats were pretty good for having to put up with such a wait, so I rolled with it. And now that we've done that, we have to beat the game. And just like that, we've beaten the game. I went stomping around on everyone in the Hoenn region with my red-tailed gecko. And I mean everyone. I battled every trainer and even a good few wild Pokemon, and had a Sceptile before the 3rd gym. And after the 4th gym, I realized I was gonna need another HM user other than the typical Zigzagoon. But you know, I was kinda craving another shiny Pokemon, and thankfully in Pokemon Emerald, for some reason Meryl on this route is a 25% encounter rate. Not that the encounter rate even really matters here though, your frame RNG also determines your wild Pokemon. And it just so happened that I had a shiny Meryl on the 2nd shiny frame for this character, which unfortunately was about 25,000 frames into the game. I got kinda unlucky here in this regard. While the number of frames away is pretty reasonable at the 1 in 8192 shiny odds, not only did I not get a particularly early shiny frame, but I didn't get the repeat frame phenomenon early either. There's some kind of quirk with the RNG that can make multiple nearby frames the same PID, meaning there can be multiple nearby shiny frames. But the first time that happened for this particular combo was 65,000 frames away. But not to worry, I got my shiny Meryl on the 2nd try, such a Phione. And I realized I also needed a flying Pokemon, so I would grab myself a shiny Tailo over by Rustboro. That's definitely a Borb, right? I would continue to ride through the game on the back of Klutz. I paused for a little bit trying to get a shiny cast form, but I would end up accidentally getting a 3IV one instead, so I called it good enough. I would give Phione the experience share at some point, and Phione would actually end up hard carrying on a couple of key fights.
Go Phione! Yes, Phione! Wait, that's actually kind of scary. Hit it, Phione! Hit Phione! Oh!
By the time I reached the Elite Four, Phione was able to contribute meaningfully there too. There were some bumps involved, but I'm using items here, so it's pretty much a guaranteed victory. And after engaging in some quick battle tower duplication shenanigans, I would be faced with my first legendary, Rayquaza, which, for the people who watched me struggle for like 20 minutes that one time to get up Sky Pillar when I was hunting it normally, I will have you know that I did it on the first try this time. For this video, we aren't going to care about getting 6 IV shiny legendaries, just getting the shiny. And it is here that I will respond to one of the more common questions that was raised by those who watched the last video. Why not just cheat? Why not just use an action replay to get them? Why not just use PK Hex? Well, primary reason number 1, that's lame. I can't make a YouTube video out of that. Reason number 2 is I had never used PK Hex, period. I'm not very into the competitive Pokemon scene, and because of that, I never downloaded it until this video, and we'll explore why I downloaded it for this video later. But I kinda question why the concept of me having fun doing this stuff is being challenged. Isn't it cool that you can get all these shiny legendaries relatively easily without having to cheat? I definitely didn't need PK Hex for this shiny Rayquaza. It only took 4 resets to get, which took 20 minutes. I maybe would have wanted it for Groudon, who took 15 resets, taking an hour and a half to get. Part of this struggle was just because I had to walk forward rather than pressing A. Not a big difference functionally, but a huge difference mentally, though I would catch it in the second ball I threw. Nice to get that color match. But a large part of the fun in going through the games like this is that these games were a part of my childhood. This was my first generation of Pokemon games, and through doing this, I'm gaining an understanding for how the games work that child me could only dream of. And if I knew everything that we were doing today was possible as a child, maybe I wouldn't have used the action replay as much as I did back then. But let's wrap up this tangent with the shiny Kyogre that I got after 4 more resets. And that gets us all of the box legendaries of Gen 3. But Gen 3 continues the legendary legendary trio trend of the first 2 generations, giving us the Regice here on the side as well, which we have to unlock with Wailord, Relicanth, and a Pokemon that knows Dig. And I figured, why not try to get these guys shiny too? And it's here that you're going to be reminded that RNG manipulation really isn't that easy of a process, as I would spend about an hour getting this Sandshrew, and about 3 hours trying to get a shiny Wailmer, before giving up on it. For Wailmer though, I was around all these NPCs, which can advance the RNG, so I really should have just gone somewhere else. I just figured it wasn't worth spending a bunch more time on this, and then a bunch of time on Relicanth too. And not all of these guys would be on my first shiny frame anyway, so I would have to wait even longer. I would unlock the Regis, do the things, and set up for more manipulations. And I actually had a little bit of trouble with all of the Regis, taking between 10 to 15 resets for each one. But again, 1/60th of a second looks like this. And in reality, you actually have 2 frame perfect inputs to hit. Once to reset the game, and another to start the battle. Some people will have a bit of a negative view on these RNG manipulated shinies, but honestly, at the point we're at in the Pokemon franchise, with Legend Arceus and Scarlet and Violet, getting shiny Pokemon in those games is even easier than this. So why is there a stigma at this point? The only main difference here is that Game Freak keeps shiny locking the legendary Pokemon in the newer games. To which we ask, why? For the love of God, it's not going to get me to play Pokemon Go and spend money on those frickin' raid passes. I couldn't even play right now if I wanted to, because at the time of writing, it's -11 Celsius outside. And for script editor me, it was -18 Celsius outside. And just think of how many extra hours people can get from these games because of shiny hunting. Hell, it's one of the only reasons that Sword and Shield are still relevant, because they made a fun way to shiny hunt legendaries. But this time they just said, here you go, legendaries. Either without realizing we would want to shiny hunt them, or saying, fuck you, go touch grass, play Pokemon Go, spend money.
I like money.
To this point, everything's been rather normal. Aside from the RNG manipulation part, many of you have probably done all of this in your Generation 3 games. And here's where things are gonna get a little bit weird. There are 4 legendaries left: Latios, Latias, Deoxys, and Jirachi. And if we want the most legit Mew possible, then 5 left. And if you want Ho-Oh and Lugia, then you'd have 7 left, but I have those from Gen 2. Latias or Latios is already roaming around the region, and because I'm playing in Japanese, I didn't even know which one it was. But frankly, I was scared of RNG manipulating this one, so we're not even gonna catch it. Then how am I gonna get them, or any of these other legendaries? It's time to introduce my friend, the Big Black question mark. You might be familiar with the Pomegg Berry glitch. One of the big glitches of Gen 3, there's an awful lot of glitches and corruptions you can do with it. This glitch has been known about for many years, but only recently did it evolve into something much bigger, as it was found that one of the many glitches and corruptions it can create becomes the pathway to arbitrary code execution. If you'd like a tutorial on this, I'd highly recommend this video by Papa Hefe. He goes over all of the version differences, as the language you play on highly affects the process. And sadly, if you're playing in Japanese, you might actually want to do this twice, because some of the codes are only available in one execution format, while the other execution format works for most codes, but the codes are significantly shorter. And typing in Japanese when you don't know it kinda really sucks. After I've done everything for this video now, I'm actually kinda good at it, but you know, it's still kind of a pain. But after we follow Hefe's guide, we have a glitched Pokemon, and simply checking its summary causes the names of the boxes to be read and executed as code, with which we can do basically anything we want, even spawning any shiny Pokemon directly into our box. But it's not that simple, of course. While this may have worked in Gen 2, as of Generation 3, there's a lot more data that gets stored by Pokemon, and if any of this data is particularly suspect, it might ruin our transferring process. So to be on the safe side, we're going to limit the shenanigans we're going to pull with the code. But there's nothing stopping us from giving ourselves the Eon ticket, seeing as we need this to be able to catch both Lotties anyway. The code for which we can find in a paste bin by Sleipnir17. According to his Twitter, he's an average glitch enjoyer. And considering he's compiled a list of over 90 different codes to execute and made them available in every language version of the game, I think I'll believe him. Show him some love as well, as the rest of this video wouldn't exist without him. I'm going to be using a lot of these codes throughout the rest of the video, and hopefully Editor Me will help you in finding them easier. Before I would get that shiny though, I was gonna need a catching Pokemon, cause Klutz only has False Swipe, and who better to get than Smeargle? But access to Smeargle is blocked by Sudowoodo, and seeing as this is the only one one we can get, why not make it shiny? And you know, of course, why not make the Smeargle shiny? And if I'm gonna need a Shroomish to teach its Spore, why not make that shiny as well? And if I want Thunder Wave, I'll need an you get the point. Don't get lost here though. Because I wanted all of these shiny, it took about 9-ish hours to get all of those and teach Smeargle all the right moves. And then 45 minutes later, I'd find a shiny Latios, and get spoiled with catching it on the 6th Premier Ball. Like yeah, I might have 86 Master Balls sitting right there, but the Premier Ball is so much nicer. Now that we have Latios, how am I going to get Latias? After all, I told you that I wasn't going to catch this one. As I said though, we can do basically anything with our abomination here, including respawning the Southern Island Pokemon and switching which one is there. And I'm going to reiterate that trying to type in Japanese when you don't know Japanese really sucks, especially when the symbols look like this, because we're on a Game Boy. Some of the symbols can be straightforward, but others might look exactly like another one, and you might get confused by a capital symbol versus a lowercase symbol. How many of you knew that there was both a capital and a lowercase smiley face in Japanese? The difference matters here. How many of you even knew there were a couple different accent marks that you can put on a symbol? I didn't know that. If for some reason you're following along at home though, and you're also playing in Japanese, I have some advice for you. If you're stuck on a symbol, take a look at the raw hex code of where you're at. Then you can use this chart found on Bulbapedia to determine what that symbol should be. And if you still can't really tell, the nearby symbols on the chart should be the same as the nearby symbols on the game's keyboard. And sometimes those nearby symbols are easier to confirm than saying, I think it's this one. Don't be stupid like past me. I spent about an hour troubleshooting the codes before I was able to start resetting for Latias. When I would finally hit the shiny frame, Latias then took another half hour to catch. You can, of course, use RNG manipulation to make any Pokeball a Master Ball, but I have no concept of how to do that. With that done, we've only got a few Pokemon left. Just like we unlocked the Eon ticket, we can unlock Birth Island, home of Deoxys. Several of the codes will use this old guy in Mauville City as the mystery gift distributor, and he can be a different color based on your trainer ID. We get the ticket from him and head to the island. I got kind of annoyed with the stone minigame, not gonna lie, but at least it was made up for by the banger boss music Deoxys has. And of course, since we have the Deoxys and Lati event through this method, we can also acquire an Old Sea map to be able to catch Mew in the same manner. I'd have a bit of difficulty with the RNG, made up for by having the first Premier Ball catch it. This is the face of a man who just got away with murder. I'm just kidding, FBI. Please don't knock on my door. You can also do the Naval Rock event for Ho-Oh and Lugia, but again, I already have those from Gen 2. Getting all these shiny legendaries was some cute little studying and all, but now it's time for the final exam, Jirachi. Wait, why is there that much time left in the video? Surely it can't be that complicated, right? While I did have to play in Japanese because the Gen 1 Mew technically didn't count, it made Jirachi a lot more complicated. Jirachi doesn't have an in-game event, and had to be obtained through an event distribution of some sort. And of course, Shiny Jirachi is even more limited, and there are only 2 confirmed ways to have been able to get a Shiny Jirachi before 2014. The Wishmaker and Channel Jirachi distributions, neither of which I have, and neither of which even work for Emerald, only Ruby and Sapphire. That alone wouldn't have necessarily been an issue, but I'm also on a Japanese copy, and a Japanese game's got Celebi, not Jirachi. So I'm just thinking, am I screwed on this one? I reached out to Sleipnir in his DMs, asking if he had any sort of suggestion as to how to go about this. Japan got quite a few events for Jirachi, but the amount of information for these events is rather limited, because for these events you would have had to been right there, talking to whoever has the ability to hand out these event Pokemon. In addition to this, you may have had to been chosen to receive it beforehand, further limiting the pool of people who would have participated in these events, which makes some of these events so niche, so unknown about, that PK Hex doesn't even have the events registered. This is why I downloaded PK Hex. I wanted to see if it would flag a Shiny Jirachi from one of these events as being illegal. Come to find that the majority of GBA Jirachi events aren't even in their database, though I would still find someone upload one of the unlisted events to Project Pokemon forums. And with this, our glimpse into PK Hex was at the very least still useful. As I was playing around with Jirachis, sometimes hitting that Make Shiny button, I would notice something. Sometimes it would still have the green check mark until I clicked it, which would then give me an error message, even on the ones we know can be shiny. But PK Hex has been regarded as having better hack checks than the Pokemon Company themselves, and I figured if even it could be fooled for a few seconds, we might be in business. So I set my sights on one particular event Pokemon, the 2005 Tanabata Jirachi. This was a Daisuke Club distribution, which was the most common of these Gen 3 Jirachi events. According to Bulbapedia, only about 27,000 people were selected to receive this Jirachi, and quite possibly far fewer actually received it. If you happened to get this event distribution, or might have contact with someone who did, I would love to know the details of how this thing was received. And if you know a person who worked for the distribution, even better. Maybe we could reinvent exactly how this event went down, to know if what I'm about to do was even possible. Because of course, I just so happened to have a shiny Jirachi from this event back in 2005, when I was 8 years old. I definitely had the extra money back then to be able to fly to Japan just for a Pokemon event. Don't believe me? Well, too bad. Here it is. See, the ID number matches up, and the OT is correct, and even that pesky secret ID is correct as well. Of course, you probably want to know how I got this. You're probably going to want to get a catching Smeargle for this one, by the way. If you're following along at home on an English copy, I'll also explain how you can repeat my steps for a shiny Wishmaker Jirachi or a Channel Jirachi instead. No bonus disc required. Wait. Why'd you buy that? We don't need that. Well, that was an expensive backup plan. But the reason I called a Jirachi the final exam is we're gonna have to do a lot of work to make this Jirachi legit, or at least believable enough for me to risk my Pokemon Home and Nintendo Online accounts on it. From the PK3 file of the event I found, we can see that the secret ID of the event is 00000, which they used for many events in Gen 3, by the way. With this, we know both the Trainer ID and Secret ID that we need, and what do you know? We can change those with our glitch Pokemon. So I changed my Trainer ID to 50707, then the Secret ID to 0. If you're doing Wishmaker Jirachi, the TID is 20043. And the SID is also 0. And for Channel Jirachi, the TID is 40122. Since you can't immediately confirm the SID, we have some extra work to do there. After typing in the code to change your SID, save your game. Check the summary of the glitch Pokemon to execute the code, and make sure you do not save from here on out. Next, you're going to want to catch any Pokemon, and then we're going to need another code to read the SID from that caught Pokemon, which will then display as our Trainer ID in our Trainer card. Whether it ends up being the correct number or not, we are going to reset the game. When you boot back up, if it was the correct number, then you can execute the code again and you're good. But if it wasn't, make sure your code is correct and try that process again. This concludes the first question on the final exam. The exam isn't over yet, but it's time for an extra credit question, because depending on your character's gender, we might have an extra step here. We don't necessarily have to do this step right now, but you can do it if you want, because you might find it kind of funny. And if you're on Japanese, you might want to do it now, because it's easier. If you want to make Channel Jirachi, you're in luck, because this can have a male or female OT. But the Japanese Tanabata Jirachi has to have a female OT, and the Wishmaker Jirachi has to have a male OT. And my character on this save file is a male, and it needs to be a female, so it's time for a sex change. If only it were this easy and flawless to do in real life. The next closest logical step to a sex change is changing your name. We do another code for that, and it will conveniently be whatever name you type in box 5 for all languages. For Channel Jirachi, it's just Channel, all caps. For Wishmaker Jirachi, we do Wish MKR. Again, all caps. And for the Japanese Tanabata Jirachi, we do whatever this is. Editor me, make sure this is easy for people to see what to type. So now we are technically the exact original trainer for these events. But we still have one problem. How the heck do we get a Jirachi? Well, we're going to need to run several more codes. Since we're literally a god of this world at this point, we're going to force Jirachi to spawn in a wild battle. And just to flex, we're going to do it on Mirage Island. So we need the code to make that appear. And what we're going to do is create a custom mass outbreak on Mirage Island. This is where I'm actually happy that it's Japanese, because the glossary of what to name the boxes looks like this instead of this. You should probably just use the eShark code generator for this one though. Once again, you're going to want to use the hex code and the character charts from Bulbapedia to make sure you're putting in everything correctly. What we're doing here with this glossary is just converting Jirachi's index number to the code that will make Jirachi appear. Jirachi has an index number of 0199. We run the code and... that's a Milotic. For some reason, this character has 2 separate index numbers. There is literally no difference between them aside from it being on the red page or the blue page. And this specific circumstance is the only reason that I can see that being an issue. Like, it doesn't matter what button for space you use, why not this one? But after fixing this error, I would have Jirachi on Mirage Island. And now we just need to make it shiny. If you want this to be as legit as possible, you could check Pokefinder to see if there's any way to produce a valid PID confirmed from the channel and Wishmaker distributions. But I'm thinking as long as your trainer ID and secret ID are correct and the PID the Pokemon has says it should be shiny, then I think you're okay. If it does exist for those, even if it's like 4 billion frames out or something, Papa Hefe describes the process of using Ace to adjust your RNG states to make resetting for that shiny frame faster. You might want to go that extra mile, especially if you plan on using this in any sort of online endeavors. But again, you should be fine. The one I'm doing here, we don't even know if it exists, so you should be good. From here, we just have to do some wild Pokemon RNG manipulation for a shiny. Seeing as we changed our TID and SID, we're going to have different shiny frames now, saving me a whole 10,000 frames per reset. I'm not sure what the English ones look like, but these shiny frames were pretty good for me. An important thing to note is that the Pokemon here will be level 0 and have 4 sketches as its moveset. I just had it copy my Smeargle's moves. False Swipe and Odor Sleuth have a lot of PP. It also copied Spore though, so I got a taste of my own medicine. And the reason you want a catching Smeargle for this is it will have to be in a regular Pokeball. You technically don't have to catch it with one, we can change it if you don't, but I'd advise suffering through it anyway, especially if you're on Japanese, because the code to change that stuff is only in the other execution method, and I really didn't want to have to get another glitch Pokemon. If the stars align and that 3 catch rate doesn't make you want to pull all of your hairs out one by one, you'll have a shiny Jirachi in a Pokeball. But we're still not completely done. You'll have to level it up to get rid of all of its moves, because if they aren't something Jirachi can learn, they are illegal. Nothing a little Battle Tower rare candy cloning can't fix. And now, at this point, it should be fine to transfer. For Japanese, the one incorrect thing about it is the met location being Route 130 instead of a fateful encounter. If you're doing Channel or Wishmaker, then additionally, the original game of the Pokemon is incorrectly Emerald when it should be Ruby or Sapphire. And if you didn't use a Pokeball when catching it, you'll also want to change that. The level met should actually be correct at level 5 because level 0 is what is used for eggs, and in this game they hatch at level 5. Some of its data will be erased when transferring to the newer games, but I'm not exactly sure to what extent the metadata survives. So if you want to be extra safe and go that extra mile, you'll need one final code where we can conveniently change all of this info at the same time. And you can also give it Pokerus while you're at it. An important thing for Japanese players to note though is that it's only available in the 0615 execution method. They will not work for the 085F method, and that's why I was completely clueless as to why these weren't working. And again, I didn't want to bother getting the other glitch Pokemon. It wasn't even available at all in Japanese, but shoutout Sleipnir, he was able to have it available in a couple days. For me though, I just ended up seeing if it would work as is, with Route 130 as the met location, transferring a copy of each of our shinies and shiny legendaries. And while I was at it, I cloned a few Pokemon from my original Emerald file to bring up. And I don't remember this at all, but somehow I had a Wishmaker Jirachi on Emerald. I'm not sure if it was from a Game Shark or an action replay code, or if I actually had it traded to me by someone. Maybe I should ask my childhood friend Jimmy if he had the bonus disc back in the day, but I would transfer from Gen 3 to Gen 4, from Gen 4 to Gen 5, from Gen 5 to Pokemon Bank, from Pokemon Bank to Pokemon Home, and Pokemon Home to Pokemon Scarlet. And with the new DLC, the only Pokemon we couldn't bring up were Tailo and Electrike. So it's not a real Borb after all. I noticed we had some ribbons on some of these guys, and I have to applaud Game Freak on the title name here. My childhood Blaziken is definitely a treasured memory, and with the power of cloning, I can enjoy these Pokemon in both Gen 3 and Gen 9 forever. Thank you guys for watching, and wait, what's that? The video's not over? What more could I possibly do? Well, when I said I wouldn't be going for perfect IVs on Pokemon in this video, that was originally the plan. But when I was done with the script, it was later in the day around 7 p.m, and I was just going to start recording in the morning. However, I decided to learn the process of going for particular IVs on the Pokemon with the rest of the day. And I can't exactly explain it, but I couldn't stop. I became low-key addicted to RNG manipulating the best Pokemon of Gen 3. I started with 5 IV, 0 attack Pokemon, moving on to 6 IV, and then to 0 speed. But how does this differ from what I've already done? Well, the main thing is it's a bit of a pain in the ass to set up. You have to look up the Pokemon that you want, you figure out what SID could make that Pokemon shiny, you change your SID, meaning you have to solve this garbage again, then you have to check your SID, so you catch a Pokemon, run a code to confirm the new SID, find a nearby seed to that shiny frame that you can reach, and then use the eShark generator to make a code so that way you can hit a closer seed to the target Pokemon. And if you happen to have caught all the static Pokemon and are looking for those, then you're going to have to use some codes to get them to respawn. Don't worry about using that for the explanation, by the way. Papa Hefe does this at the end of his video. But it's just a whole lot of setup work involved. But again, I couldn't stop myself from doing all of this. I did all that setup work 4 times. I got a perfect minus attack quirky nature setup that I used for Latias, Latios, Rayquaza, because why not, Regice, Mew, Kyogre, Cyndaquil, and Trico. Then I set up for a full 6 IV docile shiny frame, getting Beldum, Mew, Ho-Oh, and Lugia, all the Gen 2 starters, all the Gen 3 starters, and the Gen 3 legendaries with those stats. The only exceptions being Jirachi and Deoxys. Jirachi, because as we went over, it would be illegal, you have to do the right TID and SID combo, and I'm pretty sure none of these combinations can be perfect IVs. And Deoxys, only because the code to respawn it isn't translated for Japanese versions just yet, but Sleipnir said he just kind of takes requests for what gets converted to Japanese, so that code might be available by the time this video goes up, but I already got the shiny one, so I didn't really need another one. But I got all of those, and I realized, wait, Regirock, Regice, and Registeel are all really slow, so it would probably be worth getting a 0 speed version of those guys. And Regice again would want 0 attack. So I repeated the whole process over again just for one singular Pokemon, being this 0 attack, 0 speed Regice. And I did it one last time for a 0 speed Regirock and Registeel, meaning I now had an entire box of perfect shiny Pokemon to transfer, plus an extra clone of my Shroomish from earlier, just so I can make it to 30 for that Gen 4 transfer step. But all of this still wasn't good enough for me. When I did the first transfers, I noticed the Treasured Memory and the Hoenn Champion ribbons, and are these Pokemon really perfect if they don't have a single ribbon from Gen 3? So I took all of them through the Elite Four, having a Rayquaza carry them so they wouldn't gain experience or anything, so I could train them properly in Scarlet and Violet. I didn't record most of this because I was having a bit of a nostalgia trip with this part. I used to bring my OG Rayquaza through the Hoenn Elite Four time and time again on this very Game Boy. So to do it now with a shiny Rayquaza, hit a little bit different. So I would make all of these Pokemon champions, and then I would have to trade them over to my English save file. And I actually had to buy another GBA and a link cable to do this because for some reason you can't use the PAL Park with a different language GBA game. But I plugged in my Heart Gold version and started to transfer. Oh no, what are you doing? Why are you going into the contest hall? So yeah, apparently even this wasn't enough for my liking. I also had to get a contest ribbon on every single one of these Pokemon, just so they could have the Treasured Memory title. I think Past Me is stalling on this video being over at this point. What, the 70-ish hours of getting all these guys wasn't enough, huh? You just had to spend another 11 hours in the contest hall? Well, yeah, just entering the contest wasn't enough. You'd need to feed them Pokeblocks to give them good initial assessment. Then you're at the mercy of the contest hall AI, who are actually pretty darn good at trying to make sure that you specifically don't win, even on the easiest rank, even if that means giving another one of the AIs a double maximum audience. And not to mention, this is my childhood save file that had basically no berry variety, and I only had 1 or 2 left of all these berries. Thankfully the Battle Tower dupe is pretty busted, but then of course I had to turn all these berries into Pokeblocks, and to consistently win most of the contests on the first try, I had to feed them 5 Pokeblocks each. So yeah, it took about 11 hours. But I mean, come on. The title is cool, and I would finally do the whole transfer journey again, basking in the sparkles of my perfect 3D shiny Pokemon from Gen 3. I should probably train some of these guys for raids now, huh? But thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like the video. And once again, if you haven't already, check out I'm a Blissey, Papa Hefe, and Sleipnir17. Their links are down below. Go sub to all these guys. And make sure to subscribe here. I do normal shiny hunting videos as well, and I'll probably be doing a very similar video to this for Generation 4. Thank you to Twinkle for becoming a new channel member and directly supporting my content. You can do so here with memberships or super thanks or via Patreon or my Twitch channel if you want to catch some videos live. I will be making some bonus videos with this footage that will be available to members and patrons, and that extra support is greatly appreciated. A lot goes back into the channel. Again, I had to buy an additional GBA and link cable for this video, and you know, I bought a Coliseum bonus disc as a backup plan for Jirachi, so this video was expensive. Don't worry, the box part of it was fake, so I saved about $40 on that, but the disc part was still pretty expensive. Hopefully the next video is not too much more expensive. Oh, I bought some new Gen 4 and Gen 5 games already. Looks like we're going to Sinnoh and Unova. Here on YouTube, you've probably seen a top 10 rarest shiny Pokemon video. And in such a video, it's more than likely that shiny Manaphy was somewhere near the top.
Our number 1 spot, Manaphy.
For number 2, I chose a Pokemon Ranger Manaphy.
Manaphy, one of the hardest shiny hunts you can do in Generation 4.
And why wouldn't it be? You have to beat a spin-off game to do a quest to get an egg, then transfer that egg to a Gen 4 game, trade it because it's shiny locked on that save file, and hatch the egg over and over again on new save files until it appears shiny. All of this for one shiny Manaphy. Given that, the following imagery might be quite shocking.
That's good. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's... Alright, that's good. Okay. It's enough slices!
How? Surely this isn't real. Surely I had to use PK Hex for this, right? No, my friend. I obtained all of these with only one copy of Pokemon Pearl. No action replay, no PK Hex, and they are fully transferable through Bank into Pokemon Home. Buckle up. Today, we're glitching out Pokemon Pearl, getting shiny legendaries with various glitches, including a glitch so complex there's not a single good YouTube tutorial for it yet, culminating in us cloning ourselves and turning Nurse Joy into a Blaziken. Yeah, things get weird. And this time you can suck it, Pokemon Go players. You don't even have Manaphy yet. Looks like I finally win. But before we can do all of this, I'll need you to like the video and make sure you're subscribed. Well, okay, that's not a requirement. I mean, you know, it'd be real cool if you did though. First, we'll need to hone our skills and catch the other shiny legendaries of this generation. So we need to go back to the beginning. Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum were when Child Me was at the peak of my action replay using ways. Perhaps because of that, I've never done a single glitch in these games. Why use the Void and risk corrupting my save file to get Darkrai when I could just hack in a member card and just do the event? So I started a new game. Just a note though, I started with Japanese Pearl here, but I would recommend English Diamond if you want the easiest experience. From a fresh save file, we can set up a glitch that will get us boatloads of shiny Pokemon. You've probably heard of it before, it's the Cute Charm glitch. In case you haven't or need a refresher, allow me to do a brief technical explanation. From the beginning of the game, we're given 2 ID numbers, our Trainer ID and Secret ID numbers, which are generated upon loading into the overworld, being when you finish watching the cutscene on your TV. These ID numbers are generated from the RNG seed, and the RNG seed is determined by 2 factors. What time the DS clock is currently set to, including the number of seconds, and how long it took to load into the overworld from booting up the game, which we will refer to as delay. And it turns out certain RNG seeds can give us ID numbers that are very close to each other. This is important in the calculations of shiny Pokemon in Gen 4, where the game splits the PID of the Pokemon in half, then compares the binary of these numbers with the binary of our ID numbers. If we do a visual representation of this, it would count the number of ones in each column of this binary comparison. If the result of the comparison shows 0, 2, or 4 ones in each of the 13 columns, a Pokemon is shiny. If there's a 1 or a 3 in any column, the Pokemon won't be shiny. But this is why we want close ID numbers, giving us 0s or 2s in most of the columns. Where Cute Charm comes into this is there's a 2 in 3 chance of forcing a wild Pokemon to be of the opposite gender, when the first Pokemon in our party has the Cute Charm ability. When this happens, the PID of a Pokemon is set to one of 25 options of the opposite gender, there being 1 PID per nature per gender of Pokemon. These PIDs will vary, but can be quite simple. For example, they can be 0 to 19 with a male Cute Charm lead, and 96 to AE with a female Cute Charm lead, meaning when we're looking at a Pokemon's shininess, it's all up to the binary of the lower PID number. If we have our 1s and 0s in the right columns when comparing our IDs, our Pokemon will be shiny. If you're not lucky enough, none of them will be shiny, giving us a 1 in in 24,576 chance of finding a shiny. As we only have a 1 in 3 chance of finding a Pokemon that Cute Charm didn't affect, with a 1 in 8192 chance of that Pokemon being shiny. But if we are lucky enough, several of our Cute Charm PIDs will be shiny. A maximum of 8 per gender can be shiny, giving us a maximum chance of 21.34% for finding a shiny Pokemon. Bada bing, bada boom, you're now an expert on the Cute Charm glitch. For a tutorial on setting it up, check out this video from I'm a Blissey. They'll walk you through getting the Cute Charm glitch, as well as RNG manipulating a shiny starter Pokemon while you're at it. I did that myself, and we started playing the game with Brick, our shiny Chimchar. The only thing is, I wanted Nasty Plot on him, which he gets at level 23, so I EV trained him until I got there. Why not just wait and feed him vitamins, you ask? Well, why aren't you eating your vitamins? You know, you could make that easier by eating high-quality food that you can get delivered straight to your door. Now let's get to breaking the game. All that time spent training Chimchar made Roark quite easy, even without a fighting move. Took down the galactic baddies and made my way to Eterna Forest. Here we can get the earliest Cute Charm Pokemon, Lopunny, by evolving Baniri. But it's not the fastest way to get Cute Charm, because my god, friendship grinding is so freaking slow in this game. I thought it would be really cool, get Cute Charm before leaving Eterna Forest, maybe get a double shiny, but I decided to give up once I hit level 20, and thankfully I did, because it took until after the 4th gym to actually evolve. By then I was just over it, plowing through the rest of the game, beating the gym leaders, killing Palkia, all that good stuff. And I destroyed the Elite Four, even beating Cynthia first try with only Brick, thanks to Nasty Plot. See, I know what I'm doing, it was worth it. Time for the sweet, sweet legendaries. Let's overview what we have in Diamond and Pearl. There's the box legendaries, which we get through the story, the Lake Trio, which we get after fighting those, Heatran, Giratina, Crescelia, and Regigigas, which are post-game, and the mythicals, with no natural way to obtain them. Anything naturally available through the game, we can just use RNG manipulation for. We set a particular date and time in our DS settings, from which we start our game at the right time to give us the right delay to then give us the RNG seed we want. Once we load in, we can use the coin flip app of the Poketch to confirm what seed we're in, doing so without causing RNG advances, and once we know we're in the correct seed, we utilize Chatot. Its signature move, Chatter, can record something we say. But I turned its cry into butts. But when you have something recorded with chatter, it will be played at varying tones, by rolling a number between 0 and 100, which will advance the RNG state by 1 each time. So we just listen to the cry again and again until we hit the RNG advance that we want. For a full how-to video, you'll once again want to check out I'm a Blissey. There are various guides for the various types of encounters you'll have. For now, I got Uxie, Mesprit, Azelf, and the box legendary. But just kidding, it's not here. So in Diamond and Pearl, when you kill the legendary, it'll stay dead. There is a respawn mechanic to it, but it's only there for the exceedingly rare chance that it fled during your initial battle with it. If you knock it out, you won't be able to rebattle it. So rip Palkia, and rip my sanity, because in Diamond and Pearl, to continue to catch legendaries, you need to finish the Sinnoh Pokedex and obtain the National Pokedex. At least in this game, you just have to see them, not catch them. But I still didn't like having to run around the whole region to battle specific trainers that I skipped initially. In the end though, it is worth doing, as we unlock some more legendaries. Crescelia and Giratina are now available, and only Diamond and Pearl OGs will remember the days when Rotom was kinda considered a legendary. Like, come on, special event and you can only get one. Sure, the stats weren't that good and you could breed them, but Rotom was an honorary legendary to me. Overall, I'd say the process of RNG manipulation is a tad bit easier than in Gen 3. Due to some rounding, it's a lot easier to hit the right delay than it is to hit the shiny frames of the Hoenn games, at least in my opinion. But in order to get the rest of the legendaries from here, we have to do some special things. For Heatran, we need to finish questing in Stark Mountain, and for Regigigas, we need to transfer the Regis from a Gen 3 Hoenn game. Thankfully, we still had a bunch of clones from our Gen 3 video. Once we RNG manipulate these two, those would be all of the legendaries that are readily available, with only the mythical Pokemon remaining, being Manaphy, Darkrai, Shaymin, and Arceus, which maybe I should start saying in Japanese, so you guys can't say that I'm wrong. Arceus. Ha. Checkmate. Darkrai, Shaymin, and Arceus were available in BDSP. However, Arceus requires beating Legends Arceus to be able to shiny hunt, and Darkrai and Shaymin are no longer available in those games, as their events were only limited time. I know the Sinnoh Tour just happened, but it's over now, so go away, Pokemon Go players. But thankfully, we'll be able to get 3 of these mythicals with another famous glitch in the Pokemon series, the Void Glitch, which again, I didn't have any experience with. The glitch used to be pretty dangerous, and and that kept me from doing it. However, now that there's been about a decade of research into it, it's quite safe if you stay on the routes, and the routes are way faster than they used to be. Let's go over the current routes for Darkrai and Shaymin. These newer Void routes are brought to you by Retire, who I can attest is absolutely determined to break Diamond and Pearl as much as possible. These newer routes use a glitch called ledge canceling, and shaves a few minutes off of some of the previous routes. Before we can enter the Void though, we need to make some preparations. First and foremost, we'll need to be on a save file that has done the following. Obtained the Pal Pad from the bottom floor of a Pokemon Center, obtained the Bicycle and make it your key item for pressing Y, obtained the Explorer Kit and used the Explorer Kit once and watched the Regirock cutscene, entered the Contest Hall in Hearthome and received the Dress or Tuxedo, and will want a Pokemon with Teleport or Fly, as well as one with Dig or to have escape ropes. Once we've made our preparations, we can head to Jubilife City. You can use whatever method of tweaking you want to get you into the Poketch building, but I'll go over what's probably the easiest one. Southwest of the Pokemon Center, we'll want to start on this tile. Get on the bike and make sure it's in slow mode. In one motion, go right until the last tile of the street, where you press down, then immediately back up, and back to the left. This took some practice for me to get consistently, and don't worry, we'll be getting a lot of practice with it. So at this point, I'm able to get it on the first try most of the time. If you bike to the left and the city didn't load correctly, this is what we want. If you still see the GTS building, it failed, and you'll need to retry again. Once you get it, head around the building and head out into the glitched version of Route 203. You'll want to come stand on this exact tile and reload your graphics. This can be done by entering a menu and exiting it. When the graphics reload, you should be glitched inside the Poketch building. From here, go down one. This will enter the building, but will be on the other side of the door. This is our entrance point to the Void. There are other entrance points, but anything we'll be doing in this video will start with this one. Make sure to have your Poketch on your step counter so you don't get lost. The routes for Shaymin and Darkrai will start off the same. We'll go 1 south, 17 west, then 18 south. Press Y to get on the bike, and go 1 north. Reload the graphics, then head 415 steps west. Once you're here, we'll save and reset the game. Upon loading back in, we'll go 1 east, reload the graphics, then head 512 steps south. Once there, we'll go 2 steps west and 1 step south, then reload the graphics. Then we'll go 1 step north and 349 steps east. When we hit this point, we need to make sure that the bike is in the faster gear. You can inch toward the right step in the slower gear and switch to the faster gear after if you wish. This is where we'll be doing the ledge canceling, which has some timing involved to it. We want to go 1 step south, which will send us over a ledge. But while you're in the air, you want to press X to attempt to open the menu. You have about a 20 frame window to do so. After the first one, we'll do this a couple more times by going 1 east, and if we jump up, enter the menu. After doing this 3 to 5 times, we'll go 1 east until we go over the ledge, but this time let it happen. And as this happens, we should be pushed to the left. From here, we'll go 1 north, 25 east, and 1 south. The ledge canceling adjusts our subpixel position, allowing us to walk onto this tile if we were successful in changing it. If you bonk when trying to move south, you'll need to go 22 steps west and try ledge canceling again. But if you're able to move south, congrats, we're almost done. This is where the routes for Shaymin and Darkrai branch off of each other. Let's do Darkrai first. From this position, we go 183 steps east and 275 steps north. At this spot, reload the graphics, exit the menu, and hold up. Things will look weird, but don't worry. The graphics aren't aligned properly, but they'll be fixed when we get inside the room with Darkrai. From here, you're free to catch it or save to shiny hunt it. Hopefully you find it as fast as I did. I mean, I doubt it because I used RNG manipulation, but I'm rooting for you. Once we have Darkrai, let's do that route again so we can get Shaymin. From our successful steps south, you'll want to head 340 steps north, and then 957 steps east. At which point you'll reload the graphics, which will again be misaligned and looking kinda weird. This time to fix that, we're going to save and reset. Once you've loaded into the game, you'll be right in front of Shaymin. Feel free to catch it, shiny hunt it, or RNG manipulate it. While there is a void route for Arceus, even one where we can catch as many Arceus as we want, Arceus is unfortunately going to be our first Pokemon that we won't be getting the shiny of in this series. Unlike the previous generations, there are some rather strict rules as to what Pokemon will transfer from these games. There was only one event for Arceus per continent for Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, and this event specifically gave you a level 100 Arceus that has Pokemon Diamond as its game of origin, and it was specifically coded to not be shiny. So a non-shiny level 100 Pokemon Diamond Arceus with Judgment as its only move is able to transfer upward, even if there's still several things wrong about it. So no shiny Arceus for us. However, these strict rules still carry over to Darkrai and Shaymin. There's conflicting information out there on what will and won't transfer with these guys, but it's only truly safe if the game of origin is Platinum. Darkrai has to be at least level 50, not knowing the move Pursuit, and I believe technically Shaymin shouldn't know Defense Curl, but when I checked, PK Hex doesn't seem to flag that. Even if we do everything else right outside of being from Platinum, there's still no guarantee that they'll transfer, because Shaymin at least still needs to have the Fateful Encounter flag, which is given by the event in Platinum. However, it's not given by us catching it in the Void. With that being said, why did I still get these two? And why have I still not talked about Manaphy yet? Well, we needed some practice with the Void and RNG manipulation first. Now that we have that, it's time for us to tackle the newest and most complicated glitch of Generation 4. Arbitrary script and code execution, which as we know from our previous videos is our gateway to being able to do pretty much anything we want. Gen 4 Ace was first discovered to be possible by a team of Retire, Fleeter Chiari, Map, and Martmists in 2021. Retire made a full video on how they discovered it, an interesting watch, which ends in a terrifying setup that doesn't look possible for a human to perform, mainly because of ledge canceling, which this setup would make you do 96 to 130 times. Hitting a 20 frame window isn't too hard to do once or even a few times, but doing it over 100 times in a row, that's a different story. Over the past few years though, it has become much more accessible, and even as I've been making this video, Retire has been hard at work making advancements in the setup, and I myself have done the setup twice now, so not only does it work, but we humans can indeed pull it off. Don't let that fool you though, performing this glitch is still really freaking complicated. So, let's do it. Before we can begin, we need to make some preparations. Like, a lot of them. There's a text-based guide written for all of this by Retire that's linked below. We'll be making a bootstrap, an initial piece of code that will redirect code execution to an area of memory that we can easily change. So in addition to the requirements to enter the Void, we'll need to do some more things on our save file. We'll need 5 gym badges, getting us the Link Searcher Poketch app from the Poketch Company. We'll need a Pokemon with a serious nature and a naive nature, getting us the Calendar and Dot Artist Poketch apps. We'll either need Rock Climb for these, or to use the Void glitch to skip that, a guide for which is also linked below. We'll need a Silk Scarf from the Game Corner, costing 1,000 coins or 20,000 Pokédollars, and we'll want our bicycle to be our key item. We'll also need to catch some Pokemon, ranging from specific to very specific. First, we'll need our Pokemon with Dig, or have escape ropes in our bag. Next, we'll need Noctowl and Machoke, which we can find on various routes together at nighttime. And we'll need Cacturn, which unfortunately is only on Route 228, meaning you'll either need the National Pokédex for it, to trade it over from another game, or use a Void route to be able to catch it early. But these right here are the easy Pokemon. We'll need one more, that is our super specific Pokemon, which will serve as a catalyst for our initial execution. We have 2 options for what this Pokemon is, Kakuna or Gyarados, both having their own pros and cons to using them. Our initial attempt at Ace will be subject to a bit of randomness. It doesn't always work, it can just fail, but we use this initial attempt to set up Ace with an NPC to get it to work 100% of the time. Kakuna is the easier of our 2 Pokemon, because it has no additional requirements, it just has to be a Kakuna. However, it requires another game. If we have Leaf Green of the same language in the GBA slot, we can find them in Eterna Forest. It's either that or transfer it from another game, with either Heart Gold and Soul Silver or the Pal Park. We can further increase the chances of our Kakuna working, but it requires a specific nickname and trainer name, and as it is, working 80% of the time is pretty good. Unfortunately though, if we don't have a way to get a Kakuna, then we need Gyarados. On the plus side, it has a higher chance of working. On the downside, the Gyarados needs to have a specific PID, meaning you'll need to use RNG manipulation on a Magikarp, then evolve it to get the Gyarados. To make the setup even more specific, we need it to be level 22, and its only move being Thunder, which you can get from the department store. And we can make this Gyarados work almost every time with the same specific nickname and trainer name caveat, which isn't really worth doing in my opinion, unless you're gonna hack them in, I guess. Once you have your Kakuna or Gyarados, we'll need to enter it in the Hall of Fame, as the only Pokemon on our team. But wait, How the heck are we going to do that with specifically a level 22 Gyarados? Even if by some miracle we took out a single Pokemon, we'd likely level it up. Worry not, we'll of course be using the Void Glitch, using a very quick Hall of Fame route found by MK Dasher. Before doing so, you'll probably want to set the date on your DS to early in the morning on one of these days, depending on whether you chose Gyarados or Kakuna. As we enter the Void, starting from the Poketch building entrance, we'll go 1 south, 17 west, 14 north, and then 63 west. Once here, save and reset. Upon loading in, we'll go 1 west and save and reset again. By loading into the game and taking 1 step west, we'll be in the Hall of Fame cutscene. And I hoped you liked doing that, because we're going to need to do this several times. We need our Hall of Fame entries for these Pokemon to be in records 28 through 30. Records 1 through 27 can be anything you want. We need specific dates on these Hall of Fame records, Gyarados having another advantage here. The date is going to be the same for each entry, only changing depending on what system you're playing on. Kakuna's Hall of Fame dates are going to vary slightly. For record 28, you'll need to be on December 23rd, 2022. For record 29, you'll need to be on December 22nd, 2022. So going back in time a day. And for record 30, the date doesn't matter, but you still need the only Pokemon in your party to be Kakuna. This should take around 90 minutes to 2 hours to complete, assuming you only have 1 or 0 Hall of Fame entries. Once you have the Hall of Fame set up, we'll then want to set up our bag. In the medicine pocket, we want 412 paralyzed heals and nothing else. In the ball pocket, we want 28 of any ball in the first slot, 5 great balls in the second slot, and nothing else. In the TMs and HMs pocket, we want to get rid of as many things as possible. You'll want to sell or give your TMs to Pokemon in your PC until there's none left in your bag. I collected a lot of TMs on the save file, so I had to catch a bunch of Pokemon. A pretty good time to try the Cute Charm glitch, storing my TMs on the Pokemon that I caught. And ideally, we'll have collected as few HMs as possible. By my count, the minimum number of HMs to get to this point is 3. Rock Smash to advance after the first gym, Cut to enter the radio building, and Surf, allowing us to challenge the 5th gym. Defog is of course not necessary, and to do the initial setup, neither is Fly. However, Fly is required for an additional setup, so I would recommend getting it. But don't worry, if you want to finish the game before doing any of this, therefore getting all of the HMs, go ahead, as our penalty for having every HM in the game is only about a 2% reduction to our success rate. With the medicine, ball, and HM pockets set up, we just have the mail pocket left, in which we want nothing. That's all we have to do for the bag. You can have whatever you want in any other bag pockets. Now with the Hall of Fame and bag setup, we're almost ready. On our calendar Poketch app, we need to highlight days 2, 4, 9 through 12, and 14 through 24. The month or year that you're in doesn't matter, just highlight those dates. And after that, we'll set up our dot artist application. This app will become where we input the actual scripts and codes we are executing. To know what to put in, we'll need to use Retire's script conversion tool. For now, search the available scripts for the ASE bootstrap, and make sure you set the language to the correct language version of your game. You can check additional info on the scripts by clicking the I in the top right of it. The initial script we're using to set up ACE is available in every language except for Korean. The reason I recommended English Diamond earlier is depending on your game version and language, your memory is stored differently. So many scripts need to be edited to point to the correct memory addresses. English is prioritized, then other European languages, then Japanese and Korean. If you're a programmer looking for a new hobby, I'm sure Retire would love help creating and translating these scripts, particularly for Japanese and Korean, as he says those memory addresses are wildly different. After we input all of the dots in the dot artist app correctly, the very last thing we need to do is set up our party. In slot 1, we need Noctowl holding the Silk Scarf. In slot 2 is Machoke, in slot 3 is Cacturn, and in slot 4 we have our Pokemon with Dig. Or if we're using escape ropes, we leave this slot empty. And after all of that excruciating setup, we're finally ready. Set your Poketch application to the step counter, and make sure to keep it there unless told otherwise. And we'll go ahead and enter the void from the Poketch Company building. Once in, we go 1 south, 16 east, then hop on the bicycle. After that, we head 430 north, then 1 west. At which point we will save the game and hard reset. Make sure this is not a soft reset, as it can break your save. After loading back in, we can go 352 south and 1 east, where we are going to use the Explorer Kit, but say no. After that, we go 416 north and 192 east, where we are going to save and hard reset again. The same note applies. Make sure it's a hard reset and not a soft reset. Once we load back in, we'll go 214 west then 479 south. Here we'll see some lights, and we're actually on the top floor of a Pokemon Center. We need to reload the graphics, exit the menus, and hold down until you bonk. We reload the graphics again and make your way behind the middle attendant. Talk to her and progress through her text boxes until she has saved our game, and then we will hard reset. This is the end of part 1 of the Void setup. We'll be moving on to part 2, the Ace attempts. Depending on your success, you may have to come back to this point multiple times, as this is our last save for now. As we boot up the game, we need to wait for the black and white Pokemon logo to appear. Thanks to the setup we did, doing so will wrong warp us to a different part of the Void, which is what we want. After the game loads in, we'll go 64 south and 1 west, where we can either use Dig or an escape rope. Doing so will warp you to your last overworld position before the Void. This can be the Poketch-Co, or thanks to the wrong warp, you can easily re-enter the Void through the Pokemon Center, which you might end up doing in the event there's an issue with your setup. But wherever we end up warping to, we'll want to enter a Pokemon Center. Here, we'll view the Hall of Fame at the PC, and then head upstairs. You'll lose control of your character and be invisible for a second, because during this time, the Exit Union Room cutscene is playing. And since we're in the wrong spot for that, it puts us in the Void. From here, we go 4 west and 18 steps south. Once here, we're going to change our Poketch to app 14 and use the link searcher. Once it goes to this screen, press A. The game will crash, which is what we want. Press A again, and the game will load our previous save. And now it's time to grab some popcorn, because here we're going 5,279 steps south. This will take a few minutes to do each time you get here, during which you could, I don't know, watch another one of my videos. Just don't accidentally overshoot the number of steps though. After our long trip south, we'll go 415 west. Once we're done with that, thankfully that's most of the Void done. At this location, we'll open the Pokemon menu. With these next few steps, we'll want to do it quickly, only having about 5 seconds to do so. Close the Pokemon menu, close the field menu, and step 1 south. If done correctly, the Pal Park cutscene will play. If not, go 1 step north and try those steps again. After the cutscene, go 1 north and 100 steps west. This begins our next section, where the text guide is labeled Ledge Cancel Attempts. However, it's a bit different than this type of ledge cancel. Make sure your bike is in fast mode with the higher pitched sound for this part. We'll go 1 step west, where we open our party. Make sure your Noctowl with Silk Scarf is in the first slot. And then again, we'll need to perform these next steps quickly. Close the Pokemon menu, close the field menu, walk 1 west, then 1 south. If you were successful, you will enter the Vista Lighthouse. If you weren't, go 1 north and 1 east and retry. If we were successful, we'll open our party and switch Machoke in the first slot. Close the menus, then go 1 step west. Open the party and switch Cacturne to the first slot. Then close the Pokemon menu but keep the field menu open. And now it's the moment of truth. Here, you will need to press X twice as fast as possible. Once to close the field menu, then frame perfectly. Press X on the next frame to open the menu again. If it was successful, you should hear the start menu open and see this glitched start menu flash on your screen just as your screen goes black. Once your screen goes black, wait for at least 5 seconds and then press A. If you were successful, this will bring up your Pokemon menu. If you weren't successful, the screen will remain black. If that's the case, you'll want to walk 1 step north, reload the graphics, and restart from ledge cancel attempts. But if you were successful, we will back out of our party menu and press retire. And this is our other moment of truth. Upon pressing retire, we'll have an 80 to 98% chance of everything working, depending on what Gyarados or Kakuna we used. If it worked, you should find yourself in the Pokemon League Center. But if your game crashed or nothing happened, you'll need to restart from the Ace Attempts section. And if it fails more than once or twice, then it might be a sign that there's something wrong with your setup. If that's the case, then I'd recommend asking for help in the Void Matrix Discord server, linked below. Retire is very active there and is happy to help with executing the glitch. If we did warp to the Pokemon League, we have a few steps left. Press X and B to open and close the field menu. Talk to the nurse, our new Blaziken, who executes .artist codes. Talking to her should warp you again. If it doesn't, you either didn't open the field menu, or there may be something wrong with the NPC ID you entered. And finally, you'll also want to check the mail pocket of your bag. You should see 2 items. $00 Paralyze Heals, and 1 blank item. Don't ever try to look at that item though. That'll crash the game. From here, exit out of the menus, save the game, and reset. Do this twice to ensure everything will work properly. Depending on where you save, you'll have a clone of yourself, and probably have murdered this NPC. This is just a side effect, but it's a small price to pay if you ask me. But with all of that out of the way, we're now set up for NPC Ace. Unfortunately, we're trapped in this room. Leaving will fix Nurse Joy, and we definitely don't want that. Using the .artist application, we can do basically anything we want from here as long as the resulting code is less than 120 bytes. Before you run a code, make sure to always save. You can severely mess up your save file if you run the wrong codes, and if you messed up one dot, you'll be able to go back and fix it easily. So when running codes, here's what you do. Step 1, enter your code in .artist. Step 2, save. Optional step 3, hard reset your game. You'll probably want to do this for particularly complex codes. Step 4, open the Hall of Fame in your PC. Step 5, reload the graphics. And step 6, talk to Nurse Joy to execute. You'll hear the Blaziken cry signifying the code executed. Before saving your game from here, make sure that the code had the intended effect. One thing we'll want to do is make Darkrai and Shaymin legal. Having done that previous setup work on them before, all you'll need to do is give Shaymin the Fateful Encounter flag. PK Hex says don't give it to Darkrai, and for both of them, change their game of origin to Platinum, which we can do with the Pokemon Editor script in the tool, setting param choice to 0x79 and param value to 0x0c. Once again, make sure that this code is available to run in your language. But more importantly, we can use the give egg with set RNG script, which will produce an egg of any species in our party, even Manaphy. But it turns out playing on Japanese to begin with was my undoing. While arbitrary script execution and running a give egg script would be possible, setting its RNG data isn't currently available in Japanese, as the more complicated codes or the ones that use arbitrary code execution aren't always possible in other languages. So I could either ask for the code to be translated, or I could just do all of the setup again and get it running on my English copy of Pearl. Oh hey, look. I have an English save file that can do Ace now. To get the exact egg we want, we'll need to use PokeFinder. Open a Gen 4 static window and switch to the Searcher tab. Using the filters, you can find the RNG seed for whatever Manaphy you want. If you haven't already, you'll need to make a profile for your game in the Profile Manager of the Gen 4 tools. For this, you'll put in your game version, your TID, and your SID. To make it shiny, you'll need to know your SID, either through RNG manipulation at the beginning of the game, or by finding a full odds shiny Pokemon, you can reverse engineer it. Just know that a 6IV shiny Manaphy with your TID and SID probably doesn't exist, as most ID combos will struggle to get more than 4 perfect stats. But if you wanted a flawless shiny, you could change your TID and SID with a different code. Once you have the RNG seed of the Pokemon you want, we'll need to open PokeFinder's Researcher tool, which is found in the General Tools menu of the main window. Thankfully, you don't really have to touch anything here. Gen 4's RNG algorithm is the default setting, 32-bit LCRNG. Paste the seed of the Manaphy you want and hit the Generate button. Back in the static window next to the seed, you'll see the number of advances before that PID. Subtract 1 from that number and then look for that advance in the Researcher window. Under the 32-bit column, copy its value. This is what we will paste into Retire's script converter. Under the RNG state variable, don't touch the RNG address variable, as this only changes based on your game's language. After pasting the RNG state, just hit enter, and this is the .artist setup we need. After doing the steps to execute the codes, boom! We have a Manaphy egg, and after hatching it, we should have a shiny Manaphy. Before transferring it, you'll also need to give it the Fateful Encounter flag. Cerebi's events for the egg don't say it has Fateful Encounter, but they won't transfer without it. It's not like I transferred 2 boxes of them to Black and White and they're stuck there forever now. Nope, that definitely didn't happen. I also definitely didn't transfer my Japanese Shaymin and Darkrai, and they got stuck too. Nope, definitely not. Though I didn't actually change their games to Platinum, and Shaymin still had Defense Curl, so that's probably my own fault. But that kinda sucks, cause I still want them, and for that matter, we still need to get Palkia. But now here on my English save file, we're stuck in this building if we want to make Shaymin and Darkrai legal. And this is what Retire was working on while I was making this video. Unfortunately, it only works on English and Spanish at the moment, but we can use the initial Nurse Joy setup to be able to run a code which will switch the setup to the Mystery Gift Postman. This way, not only will we be able to leave, but we'll be able to run codes from any Pokemart, and it'll allow us to save and reset the game, do trading, basically anything, with one exception. We won't be able to record a new chatter for Chatot. If we have one already though, that's fine. So if you want to RNG manipulate, you should record a chatter before executing the code, preferably one where you can easily distinguish the different tones. And just make sure from there to keep your Chatots in your party. Putting them in the PC won't break Ace, but it might make your RNG manipulation harder. But I input the codes, ran it, went to the postman, and it crashed. Huh. Maybe I missed a dot somewhere? This code is massive after all. I ran it again, and it still crashed. It turns out this code didn't work on official hardware unless the save file was saved on an emulator beforehand. This knowledge exposed a slight memory caching inaccuracy. I'm not a programmer, but apparently that's kind of funny. And because he's a god, it didn't take too long for Retire to fix. Again, sadly this code is currently only compatible with English and Spanish games, due to again, differences in memory and storage. But I was finally freed from the clutches of the Pokemon League, though I can't help but mourn the loss of our nurse Blaziken. She's helped me run so many codes, and now she'll be gone. She'll just be like every other Nurse Joy. But now, to run new codes with the Postman, we just have to put them in, save, optionally reset our game, reload our graphics, and talk to him. Then, we just make sure the code had the intended effect. And now that I'm free, I can go and get another Shaymin and Darkrai, and I can actually catch Palkia this time. Though, because I entered the Hall of Fame with only 5 badges on this file, things in the story are a little bit messed up. Such as being able to see Azelf during the Saturn battle, and oh. Spear Pillar is pretty broken, I guess. Dialga or Palkia will be in its re-battle mode. And I'm not sure if this is just a Dialga and Palkia thing, or these NPCs were messing with the RNG, but I had to stop 3 RNG advances early instead of just 1. But I snagged that, then after some struggles with editing Shaymin and Darkrai properly, I was able to complete our goal, and transfer all of the legal shiny mythicals and legendaries from Gen 4. But we're still left with an important question. What did I get 2 boxes of Manaphy for? Well, while the process of getting them was decently easy, getting about 20 per hour since they aren't clones of each other, getting set up to this extent takes a really long time, and I wouldn't blame you if you think it's a bit daunting. So I'll be giving away 50 shiny Manaphy in my Discord server, link in the description. You'll of course need Nintendo Switch Online and have a game that Manaphy is available in. I currently have them all in Scarlet and Violet, so that would be the easiest. But thank you all for watching. Remember to like the video and subscribe for more Pokemon content. And remember to check out Retire and Blissey. This video wouldn't be possible without them. Unfortunately, we don't have any crazy glitches to do in Gen 5, and we have shiny locks to deal with. But that being said, I might do something with it, seeing as it looks like we actually aren't getting Gen 5 remakes just yet. But Alpha Mega Shiny Pokemon, oh my god, take my money, Game Freak. But that'll be it from me. I've been Trails, and I will catch you guys next time. This thing, perhaps the most debated Pokemon pronunciation of all time. Allow me to end the debate here. Arceus and Arceus are both perfectly valid pronunciations. This is a tomato-tomato situation. Real-life words have differences in pronunciation depending on various factors. We will never agree on it, so stop arguing about it, and just accept both pronunciations. But the RKS system, or the ARC phone, stop. We're done. Agree to disagree. These wouldn't change how I pronounce it anyway, because I've pronounced it this way for almost 20 years. Holy crap, I am getting old. With the inevitable Arceus rant out of the way, let's shiny hunt this thing. In the last video, we went over how to get all of the shiny legendaries and mythicals from Gen 4, including infinite shiny Manaphy. Definitely watch that next if you haven't already. But the sad part about that video is, we couldn't get shiny Arceus from Diamond and Pearl, leaving it the only shiny legendary Pokemon from the first 4 generations I don't have. So it's only natural that I would go after it next. However, this time, it would be different. In the previous videos in this series, we've been using any means necessary to get the shiny in the fastest manner possible, or comparable speed. Maybe it was RNG manipulation, or maybe we used arbitrary code execution. But outside of these Pokemon and the hacked action replay shinies when I was a kid, I only have 2 non-event shiny legendaries. The Giratina, who I hunted in a previous video, then gave up and RNG manipulated it, and my shiny Rayquaza from the 100 Hours of Dynamax Adventures video. So basically, I have 0 full odds shiny legendaries. But wouldn't it be poetic if my first full odds shiny legendary was Arceus, a Pokemon that childhood me was enamored with hacking into Pokemon Diamond several times? With the expertly crafted narrative that we had ahead of us, it was time for me to start hunting. Which means we have to play BDSP. So to take your mind off of that horrifying reality, let's talk about today's sponsor. As I was about to go hunt Arceus, I realized I didn't have a single level 100 Pokemon in this game. So after transferring some from SV, we were truly ready. Sure, I didn't have a super convoluted setup to actually catch it with, and I didn't have a Master Ball because of the shiny Giratina, so even if I found it, I could just fail the thing. But hey, that'd be some good ass content. And that's for future me to worry about, because it was time to start the grind. And what a grind it truly is. Day 1 me was blissfully unaware of how demanding this hunt is. While I acknowledged how long each reset takes, it didn't truly set in for a few days. Between the rather slow reset speed of BDSP and having a cutscene to watch, you only get an encounter once about every 55 seconds, at least on the physical copy of the game. Not sure if the digital copy is faster or not, but at this speed, you get roughly 62 resets per hour at maximum efficiency, which means it would take a casual 66 hours to reach full odds on the hunt. But hey, at least that's better than shiny hunting Manaphy at full odds. After my first 3.5 hour stream, we had 152 encounters. Yikes. This simply wasn't going to cut it, so I would continue the grinding off stream. I kinda understood right away that the more I procrastinated on this hunt, the worse it would be, and really just getting in the resets here and there whenever I could was the best course of action. So aside from the time I spent eating, sleeping, or working out, the majority of my time was spent shiny hunting for Arceus. I'd head into day 2 with 274 resets down, and my hopes still high that I would get the hunt done quickly. The stream on day 2 would see some usual shenanigans, like Milo treats and the Borbs taking over my screen. Another 3.5 hours put us right at 512 encounters, a fitting number to end the stream on. But sadly, there was still no shiny Arceus to show for it. But surely we'd be getting it soon, right? Why do I even do this anymore? You guys know that it's not going to be that easy. So I kept resetting and resetting. Still not quite yet discouraged, but aware my optimism would start to deteriorate. At least at the end of day 2, I could laugh at the hilariously funny number I ended on. On days 3 and 4, there would be no stream, because I realized, oh shoot, I need to get Peter Griffin in my Fortnite Battle Pass still. I still play the game occasionally, and, you know, Peter Griffin's just peak, let's be honest. I can still aim. Sadly, I didn't record all of it, and the replays expired, so I can't share the extremely nasty snipes I was hitting, especially this one where the guy was going up a zipline, and I hit the snipe, and an AR shot downed him. It was nice, believe me. My sanity, of course, wouldn't let me play Fortnite all day, getting in resets when I got kinda bored or people weren't online. By the end of day 4, not only did I have the Peter Griffin skin, but I had climbed all the way up to encounter 1288. Pretty good, considering having to grind about 60 levels on the Battle Pass in those 2 days. This set us up to be looking pretty good going into the stream on day 5. I had some real-life stuff happen on day 5 though, cutting the stream a bit short and limiting me to less than 300 resets on the day. But hold on, if I keep this pace up, it's gonna take like 16 days to reach full odds on the encounter, over 2 weeks of my life. This is when reality set in. If I wanted any chance at not doing this for the next 2 weeks, I had to start making sure whatever I was doing, I had the Switch controllers in my hands resetting. Watching YouTube, I'm resetting. Making or eating food, I'm resetting. On the toilet, dropping a deuce, you bet I'm resetting. At this point, I started working on what will probably be the next video, still doing resets at the same time. On day 6, I would get over 500 resets done, equating to at least 8 hours of resetting. At this point, I figured it still wouldn't show up for a while, and I was going to be unlucky not finding it until the hunt's odds or later. So while I was watching the Phoenix Suns versus the Boston Celtics game on my TV downstairs, I was down there resetting, and I wasn't recording because I wasn't actually expecting it to show up. But as we were nearing the final minutes of the 4th quarter at approximately 10:46 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, I couldn't believe my eyes. While I didn't record my live reaction, you can probably imagine it. An exasperated, yes, once I saw that extra bit of yellow on my screen. I rushed upstairs, not really caring about how the rest of the game went, and started recording.
Yes. Yes. Didn't get my reaction. I was watching basketball. 2068. I did clip it, so that'll be there, but sad times. 32 hours. times I wasn't using the app.
But it wasn't over just yet. Remember, I had used my Master Ball on the Giratina, therefore having none left on this brilliant diamond save file. So we'd have to rely on the team that I brought to get it done. 2 Gallades, a Gardevoir, a Slowbro, a Houndoom, and a Magnezone. With so much time to think about it, I had kinda came up with a plan. 1 Gallade has Thunderbolt, which I would use in an attempt to paralyze it without doing too much damage. The Thunder Wave TM is a dummy ridiculous grind in BDSP, and I had no time for that. The alternative being getting Heart Scales or whatever in BDSP for the move relearner. And to be honest, I just don't want to play BDSP longer than I have to. Once paralyzed, I would false swipe it down and attempt to catch it. The main issue with this plan is that Arceus only has 35 PP. He said PP. With a limited amount of power points, Arceus would soon struggle. As it turns out though, the BDSP movesets for my Gardevoir, 2 Gallades, and Slowbro all have Heal Pulse. So even if we were running low, I could use Heal Pulse to heal Arceus up if necessary. With how little damage Gallade did with each hit, I decided I shouldn't try to get it all the way down to 1 HP, because at least for now, it had a 1 in 4 chance of picking Recover, ruining that progress. At half HP, we would still have a 10% chance to catch it with a Timer Ball, with 14% being the best it can be. So we started a cycle of false swiping, chucking balls, and false swiping again, until I got a little bit of paralysis luck that helped me get in an extra hit, which gave me that tiny extra chance for this ball to catch. It worked. With that click of the timer ball, after 10 minutes of stressing over whether I would actually catch it or not, watching my hairline recede in real time, I finally caught my first full odds shiny legendary, and finally had a legitimate shiny Arceus that child me would be proud of. And no RNG debate this time, it was actually random. The long 33+ hour grind came to an end on reset number 2068. It was so close to being nice. I gave it the fitting name of Leap Year, as not only did I catch it in a leap year, but 2068 is also going to be a leap year. And that's a random piece of trivia you can take to your next family gathering. I took our new shiny friend around for a stroll in a few cities in BDSP, before putting it in the PC and transferring it to a real video game, where it was greeted with open wings by our good friend, the Borb. And I took it around the mountains, trying out that legend plate. And once I was done celebrating, it was time for bed, and time for this journey to come to a close. After this, I did some additional investigating as to whether or not we could actually transfer a shiny Arceus from Gen 4, using PKX to make certain event Arceus shiny, based on a lead from a comment. But alas, neither the Machina or true Arceus events that I tried were able to transfer through when shiny. If anyone is currently able to get a Gen 4 shiny Arceus to transfer, please let me know. Because if I ever want to do a full form dex of them at the same time, I do not want to play BDSP 17 more times. No, just no. You can't make me do it. But thanks for watching, guys. Remember to like and subscribe. I've been Trails, and I will catch you guys next time.